Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Now, we all know that we're living in a world that human beings, haven't lived in ever in our history. That's sort of a tautology. But that the phones in our pockets, not today in our pockets, but when they are in our pockets, the phones in our pockets, the screens in our lives, all of the technology, it's changing us. It's changing the way we interact with each other. It's changing the way that we think. It's changing the way that we interact even just with ourselves and what we do with our time. And I will let scholars better than I and podcasts more interesting than I talk to you about the data of what's actually happening with screens and phones and dopamine and etc. But I want to tell you this week I hit sort of the rock bottom moment, I have a problem. And it was on Tuesday morning when I spent about 20 minutes trying to find my headphones so that I could listen to a podcast while I walked the garbage cans down to the street. It takes about 3 seconds to do and to walk back. But chas v'shalom, heaven forbid, I make that trek without hearing, content. And so I spent all of this time trying to find my headphones so that I could. And this is a problem both in the way that well-meaning rabbis, spend their free time, but also for all of us. Again, without getting into all of the data and all of the everything, listening to content constantly, consuming things all of the time, it has affected us in ways that are good. We are more connected than ever. And it's affected us in ways that are bad. Because this has been happening for years and years and years. And then with the pandemic and the world that we live in, where it felt like at every single moment there was news that might be important that we'd have to hear, it got raised to the nth degree. And it has made us better informed, and it has made us better connected. It also has made us angrier, and it has made us lonelier. And it's made it harder and harder for us to just be in the world. If you are like me, standing still for more than a second, what do? You go reach for the phone, right? That is where I'm at least, again, in the oversharing portion of this sermon. And there's a debate amongst scholars and rabbis and professional Jews so there's problems in the world, and there's always been problems in the world, and that never has changed and never will change. And the question is, so what is the role of Judaism in that, right? And you have some rabbis for centuries who have said that our customs, our rituals, our thought, our ethics, our morals, whatever it is, can and should be brought to bear on the world around us. And if you're looking for what to do in the public square, look to the Torah. And some rabbis, Barry Holtz, past head of the education school at JTS, has written that Torah can and should be an antidote to the secular world. Right? So in his read, if you want to know what to do with the phone addiction, well, pick up a Talmud or listen to a rabbi in person, not on a podcast. And others have said, no, that's not the point at all. Phrased most succinctly, I think, by Yeshayahu Leibovich, who said, why should you do a mitzvah? Why should you do a command? Because it's a mitzvah, right? Because God says to do it, and any overlap between healthy practices and Torah practices is, a happy coincidence, but not the point. And I have to say that I overall ascribe to this latter view. I don't like to sort of say, oh, you should be Jewish because it is somewhat in line with whatever the pop psychology health practices of the day are, and therefore that's why you should do Jewish things. I think that sort of pulls us away from the deep, deep conversations about ethics and theology that are the birthright of every Jew. And at the same time, as we approach this problem of distraction in our world, this problem of an inability to be alone with our own thoughts, I think there's something that Judaism has to say about it. Now, Kara, I looked for a Taylor Swift quote, but I didn't have one, but I got one from Pink. I hope that helps. The musician, she's cool. Your parents know who she is, I guess. She's Jewish. Yeah. She says that the quiet scares me because it screams the truth. And it's not just that our phones are so addictive because of the screens and the brightness. It's that we are somewhat afraid to be alone with ourselves. Because when we're alone with ourselves and we don't have the beeps or the to-do list to get to or the people we have to talk to, well, then the background noise of our emotional lives starts to get a little bit louder. And we can hear what we're thinking. We can hear what we're worried about. We can hear deep emotions that we would rather not hear. And there's a psychologist from Penn who writes, show me the ways that you avoid stillness, and I will show you the patterns of your life. Show me the ways that you avoid stillness, and I will show you the patterns of your life. Right? He basically writes that everything we do is an attempt to not be alone with ourselves, to not be still. Because in the stillness, what's going to happen? Well, for some of us, there's very real trauma in our past. There is disappointment, there is anger, there is disillusionment. And we can sort of push it to the side when we have to do things. We have to do more. We have to do other things. And so we don't deal with it. But when we're still, those feelings come back to us and they're unpleasant. And when we're still, sometimes we can contemplate our own smallness in the universe around us. To go from Penn professors to Calvin and Hobbes. There's one where Calvin is standing outside at night in the dark under the stars, and he looks up and he says, do you ever just think about how infinitesimally small we are when compared to creation? And Hobbes says, yes. And then the next panel is them inside their house with the radio on, the TV on, the stove on, and everything on, and they say, well, we feel better now. Because we can pretend in the world of our phones that we're in control of everything, right? I can tell what to click on, what to look at, what I want to see. But when we're still, we realize just how out of control we are. And there's a moment in the parsha that we read today that is famous for its stillness. Yitzchak is found at the beginning of the parsha wandering alone in a field. And this wandering alone in a field is actually what the rabbis say where mincha, the prayer, comes from. And it says that he is lasuach basadeh. So lasuach is a word which means something like conversation. And basadeh is out in the field. So the rabbis say, okay, well, this conversation that he's having, he's all alone. Who is the conversation with? Clearly, it's with God, and it's tefillah. And why is he out in this field to do it and not, somewhere else where he could be praying? So there's two different answers that two rabbis give to this moment. One says, Sforno says that the Basadeh was specifically a random place. That Yitzchak was on his way from point A to point B, and he took a detour out into the middle of a field that was absolute nowhere. He had no idea where he was, and that is where he had his conversation. And a later rabbi, Malbim, says, no. That place in the field right there, that is the exact spot that the angel appeared to Hagar and to Isaac's brother Ishmael. And that's why Isaac went there, because walking along the way, he saw that he was in this holy, holy place. And so he wanted to stand there and hope that he could have some communing moment with God in the way that Hagar and Ishmael did. So in our lives, when it comes to finding stillness, when it comes to being okay in the silence, both of these things might be true. We might have to go somewhere incredibly random to get away from ourselves and our distractions. It might be just the middle of nowhere. It might be somewhere no one knows where you are. It might just be leaving your phone for a few minutes if you can. But going into a place where no one knows who you are is a place where you can maybe be the most yourself. Going to a place that you have no attachment to at all might be a place where you can leave the attachments of the world behind. And so if you're seeking stillness, seek a place like that. Or maybe Malbim is correct, and it's finding a space that is so holy, so special, that we can be still and quiet in that place. Maybe it's a part of your home that you never bring a computer or a screen or a TV into. It's just that room is only for being in person. Or maybe it's the room that we're all sitting in right now. A place that you look at and can't help but feel the holiness of it because of what it means and what it is, and because it's a place where we leave our screens and our phones behind. There's another answer though. So Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, he points out, as others do, that the word la siach, might mean conversation, but it also might mean thorn bush. Give me a second. And so Rabbi Nachman says, no, he had to go out and commune among these bushes, because every bush, says Rabbi Nachman, every bush has its own power. In another place he says, every bush, every blade of grass, every tree has its own song. And in this moment that Isaac is out in the field, he is gathering the power of the bushes and the trees and the grass around him, and he is turning that into his prayer and allowing it to strengthen him. Because another thing that being quiet can do, that having stillness and a rest from our devices, our technology, our ability to manipulate the world around us, is that we have to deal with the world around us. And being a part of nature can help us feel like there is something bigger than ourselves, something pure and whole and holy and growing. And if we can take a moment and stand outside in a field, then we can attach ourselves to that. It's not an accident that the slang of the day, that is, put your phone down and go do something real, anyone know, is touch grass. Exactly right. Literally, a translation, Lasuach Basadeh, what Yitzchak was doing. So in our lives, we need to find stillness. We need to. We need to be able to find it a little bit each day. We need to be able to find it maybe even once an hour, just a few minutes where we silence everything around us and we can be ourselves. And maybe it's happening in a special place, and maybe it's happening nowhere special at all, and maybe it has to do with us being out in nature. But we need to be able to find it, because in our stillness we will find ourselves in a way that we can't any other time. I don't know about you, but the clearest that I think and the clearest that I feel and sort of the happiest that I am in a given week is Friday night. Because I can't answer an email, I can't look at my phone, I just have to be. I even get a little bit bored. Being bored can be great for your soul and your psyche. But also in the silence, we find something else. Lecha dumiyah tehillah, the psalmist says, to you silence is praise. The rabbis don't understand exactly what that means. How do we praise God with silence? And part of it is because in being silent, in just being ourselves, we know that that is the greatest praise we can give. All of who we are. Not the distractions, not our avatars on TikTok or on Instagram, not the thing that we want to project out into the world, but who we actually are. And so we owe it to ourselves to try to find a way to be that person, to do that. And friends, we got your back here at the synagogue and here in Judaism, because 3 times a day we ask you to find a little bit of stillness. And it's hard. It's hard in this room. It's hard for a bunch of reasons. One, Look at everybody around here. Who doesn't want to talk to all of these great people? I get it. But we ought to have a few moments of quiet and stillness. And it's so hard for the rabbis that there is a moment at the end of our Amidah where one is meant to be completely silent and just offer whatever prayers you have to offer. And the rabbis in the Talmud are so uncomfortable with this that they offer their own prayers, and then we in the Siddur take away the silent moment and put in their prayers and say, no, it's okay, don't be silent, just say what these guys have said. It's going to be fine. So in just a few moments, I promise, just a few more moments, we're going to get to the Musaf Amidah. And we're going to sing the Chatzi Kaddish, and we're going to sing the Kedusha, and we're going to do that together. That's different than silence, but it's still very important. And then we're going to have a moment of silent prayer. And if kids are talking, that's fine, okay? But in this moment of silent prayer, try to find the stillness. Things are going to come at you from your heart and your mind, from the week, things you didn't do, things you want to do next week. Note them and drop them. And hopefully, if we get to the stillness at the core of our beings in these moments of silence, we will find the silence that is praise, and we'll find the silence that is just gratitude. Gratitude for being able to be alive and who we are in this moment, in this day. Good job. Good practice.